Eamon Khan here for a second out. Pleasure to be in the company of Brad Ray. Brad, good to see you. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm all good, mate. All good. Thanks for having us on.
Wicked, wicked. A pleasure to have you on. Lyndon Arthur in the opposite corner to you. Look, been around the domestic scene trying to climb the ladder towards world honours. How do you feel being only a few days or so away from fighting Lyndon Arthur?
Yeah, look, I'm buzzing. I'm buzzing, mate, because like you say, I think Lyndon is the kind of the gap between domestic level and world level. You know what I mean? He's been in there at that top level, and I think I am kind of thought about in that lower level of British light heavyweights at the moment, which it's probably rightly so. But I think a win against Lyndon Arthur, I think that takes me up the strand of the ladder onto the next level, and I can start looking at some big fights.
Let's get into that. Why do you think people look at you at the lower bracket? Is it because of the opportunities or because of the skill?
I just don't think I've kind of had the opportunities to show the skill that I've got and what I can do. I know how good I am and I know what I'm capable of, but I've just kind of not had the opportunities to showcase that. And I think the Lyndon Arthur fight is the prime opportunity to show what I can do.
Lyndon's a little bit tricky to show how skillful you are, considering his style can sometimes be quite passive. Do you imagine it could be a type of fight where if you get the victory, you might not be able to show how good you are?
No, because I think if I'm good enough, I can take that away from him, and I think I'll be able to box him in a way that not many people have, and I think people will sit up and take note of that of not just the fact that I have beaten, the manner which I've beaten.
When people look at Lyndon Arthur as a fighter or as an opponent, they look at his jab and see that as being one of his key strengths and assets. What do you do to have to overcome the strength of his jab and get your game plan in effect?
Yeah, look, he's got one of the best jabs in the game. Everyone knows that, but I think one of the traps that people fall into is just worrying about the jab with Lyndon. The guy's a very established fighter. He's been boxing since he was 10, 11 years old. You know what I mean? I'm pretty sure he's got more in his arsenal than just a jab. A lot comes off the jab and he works the jab very well. But if I fall into the trap of just worrying about the jab, that's when he can open me up with other stuff. But yeah, look, it's down to me to kind of take that jab away from him. And like you say, I think then you're taking him out of his comfort zone, and that's when the fight will really open up, and that's when I can show what I can do.
You mentioned there about putting the pressure on him. That's something that Anti-Yard did to get the stoppage victory over him. Do you feel that that's the way to negate that jab? Just put the pressure on him from the off and try to essentially melt him.
In a way, I'm sure everyone thinks that's going to be my game plan and that's what I'm going to do. But I'm confident I can outbox him. You know what I mean? I don't have to go and try and buff him up and stick it on him. I'm confident I can outbox him as well. And then once I've broken him down, that's when the pressure can come. Because that's what I mean. I feel like I am good enough, and I feel like I've not had the opportunity to kind of showcase that skill and that talent. And like I said, I think this is the prime fight to do that, because people will sit up and take note. If I'm outboxing Lyndon Arthur, if I'm beating into the jab, and then if I break him down, I think that's a manner which no one's really done against Lyndon.
In terms of mentality, Lyndon's sort of like, he's been open and honest and put out on social media that he's only wanted to be in fights that essentially get him up and get out into the ring. He said that for the Arthur fight, the Anti-Yard fight. He said he was essentially retired, but for that fight, and he got that fight. Where do you think he stands right now in terms of wanting to be in the ring?
Look, I think he's looking at me like, well, not looking at me. I think he's looking at my title. I think he's looking at the EBU title, which is not hard. And I think he thinks I'm not an easy fighter. I don't think he thinks I'm an easy fighter, but I think he thinks it's a good opportunity to pick up a title that he's never had. He's thinking, I've been in there with Bivol, I've been in there with Yard. What's little old Brad Ray? You know what I mean? And I do think he has not overlooked me, but he's saying, I've been in bigger fights. This is your biggest fight, and I've been in bigger fights. And look, he's right. This is the biggest fight of my career, and it's not the biggest fight of his. But But yeah, look, I just hope he's not had that mentality and he hasn't overlooked me and he thinks I'm an easy win, because if he has, it's going to be a bit of a shock.
Bivol, Yard, and yourself, you'd be in good company getting wins over Lyndon, wouldn't you?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Look, I have the mentality of I need to go. I try, and every opponent I'm in with, I try and knock them out. You know what I mean? That's my mentality. And if I can go in there and get a stoppage win, and Bivol didn't, then you know I'm the unified champion of the world. I'm the best light heavyweight then.
What you get the win over Lyndon Arthur as you plan to do? What is the shot that you want to call
After this fight?
Mm.
I've made it very clear that although I am European champion and on paper, you know, I'm ahead. It kind of is a backward step, maybe people will say, but I won that British title. I won that British title, and I've made it very clear that I won that British title. And to me, it doesn't matter who's got it. You know, I'm not calling out any names. I want that belt, and by the time you know it comes round, I'm ready to fight for that title. You know, if I can put my European belt on the line and someone can put their British title on the line, I think that makes for a massive domestic fight, and you know, it'll be an exciting one.
That's an attitude that'll endear you to the hardcore boxing fans, because sometimes people think, why do you have to jump up and shoot up for the stars or the next big level off for the back of European? Why not take your time and maybe capture the British, like you say? Why do you think the mentality isn't to do that, where it is in your instance that you want to do that and you essentially say like that step down?
Because I am a hardcore boxing fan. That's why I know what I want to see people do. And you know, I think in the sport today, like you can kind of get that easy route to tiptoe around, fight for an intercontinental, fight for an interim title, and you can kind of, them domestic fights are where it happens. You know what I mean? It's where you get medalled, and it's where you get found out whether you're good enough. And you know, some of these fighters, they do kind of tiptoe around that, and you know, they kind of pick the right fights to get themselves in a position to fight for a world title. Whereas I don't want to do that. You know, I grew up watching these fights, watching these domestic dust ups for British titles, for European titles, and that's where I wanted to be. So yeah, look, I am a hardcore boxing fan. I know what the hardcore boxing fans want, and so that's what I want to do. You know, I want that British title to be sat on my mantelpiece for the you know, foreseeable.
I have to save the hardcore boxing chat for another day. I've got to end on, of course, I know you've done a lot of rounds and spent a lot of time at Hatton's gym, and we recently lost Ricky Hatton, and his funeral was the other day. What was it like having the news reach you about his passing, and what is the legacy he'll leave imprinted in your mind?
Yeah, look, I was absolutely devastated. We're gutted, because you know, Rick's been a hero of mine since we were a kid, since he was 8, 9, 10 years old, and then you know he's been a coach. I've had him in my corner. He's been a friend of mine. You know, we've been out for a Guinness together. We've watched the football together, and yeah, look, it was a tough one to take for me and for so many other people because of what he meant. And I think, you know, he was so much more than a fighter. He was so much more than a boxer, and what he'd done, it'll never be done again. You know what Rick achieved in the ring and outside the ring, you know, having that fan base and having the love of the people, because he was one of the people, you know what I mean, and people understood that. And the fan base that he had, the support he had, going over to Vegas with so many, it will not be done again. It'll never be done again. And like they say, you know, there'll only be one Ricky Hatton, and there is only one Ricky Hatton.
Brad, quickly, what do you do to make sure that emotion doesn't kind of overcome you and affect your performance? What do you put in place to not carry that into this fight?
Yeah, look, a bit of emotion's good. A bit of emotion's good, and you know, I know I've said it a few times, but look, Rick would not let me hear the end of it if we got beat by a United fan. It'd be on my case all the time, giving me stick, and well, that's the type of relationship we had with Rick. It was laughing, it was joking, and you know, even now he's not here anymore. Like the thought of him saying, "You can't get beat by a red," you know, that sticks with me, and that's my motivation for this fight.
Lovely sentiment, Brad. I wish you all the best against Lyndon Arthur. Thank you for speaking to Seconds Out, and we'll catch up on the other end.
Nice one, mate. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Cheers.